Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer. I'm podcasting from Ma'ale Adumim in Israel. Sometimes it seems that we human beings are quite a strange breed. We can accomplish a great deal if we put our individual or collective minds to it, but we have just as great a capacity for messing things up. It is not easy to understand how we manage to acquire this contradictory tendency, either from a divinely created perspective or from an evolutionary perspective. It just seems like it's there within us, whether we like it or not. By any reasonable standard of judgment, it is probably safe to conclude that this quirk has been there from the get-go. This is the way we are. But why are we that way? Is it some cosmic karma at work, forcing us to even the score whenever we go too far forward in any direction? Or is it an internal need to always find or build another challenge for ourselves when we run the risk of overcoming too much? Nobody knows the answer to these questions, but each one of us would sure like to have a clue. This week's Parsha is called Noach. Parsha names don't get any more descriptive than that. This Parsha is about Noah and the great flood. It's about the ark and the evil of humankind and Mount Ararat and the dove. It's about a guy who stood up against the social pressures of that evil and battled it in a way that was probably as far-fetched as anything in human history, and yet succeeded with flying colors. It's about that same guy getting good and drunk when he finally sees that the floodwaters are receding and exposing himself to his sons. It's about human failure and about human success. It's about watching a flood drown the earth and kill off much of life and struggling to survive through the whole thing. It's also about staring at a rainbow when it was finally all over and realizing that there is still hope. Let's review the backdrop of this story. Owing to some sort of thoroughly corrupt behavior on the part of human beings, God experienced a divine form of regret over making them. God's key observation was that, quote, all the inclinations of the thoughts of man are evil all day, whatever that may mean. Though this caused God grief, the decision was made to wipe them out from the earth. The single exception was this guy, Noah. God told him to build this enormous boat with the capacity to hold all the species of animals that would be otherwise destroyed in the catastrophic flood that was to come. Noah was to gather those animals and, along with his immediate family, board the ark and ride out the flood. As unlikely as all this sounds, it probably sounded infinitely less likely at the time. Yet it happened, and Noah got the job done. At least that's what it says in the Bible. Everyone knows this story. After Adam and Eve, it may rank up there as the best known story in human history. This is the flood. It goes without saying that the typical secular person dismisses this whole story as one great myth. There was no flood, no Noah, no ark, though they may not have any problem with this non-existent Noah getting drunk and exposing himself to his sons. This is another one of those impossible to bridge gaps concerning the Bible. It is pretty much a given that if you believe any of this stuff, you also believe in a flat earth, to say nothing of a heaven and a hell filled with either angels or demons. We're not going to attempt to bridge that gap other than by saying that this story could have been based on a factual flood that devastated some large region of the Middle East, such as the Black Sea Basin, and destroyed all life there, but one family made it out in some sort of boat that they built. This really isn't all that difficult to believe. Now that we've brushed aside that sticky problem, we can get down to business. Noah got the animals aboard. He shut the hatch and waited out the flood in the steadily rising and receding waters. After about 5 months of this perpetual state of emergency, the ark came to rest on Mount Ararat, presumably in what is now eastern Turkey. The waters continued to recede until he could see other mountains. He sent out the famous dove, which simply returned to the ark. After another week, he sent it out again and returned with an olive branch, a good sign if there ever was one. After another week, he sent it out a third time and it didn't return. This was the sign that the flood was finally over. God told him to leave the ark with all the animals and let them roam the earth and repopulate it. Noah built an altar to bring offerings of thanks to God over having survived the flood. Upon appreciating this gesture, God promised to never again destroy all life, based on the reasoning that, quote, the inclination of man's heart is evil from his youth, whatever that may mean. Following this, God cemented this promise into a kind of covenant with human beings to never again destroy them by flood. The sign of this covenant was nothing less than the glorious rainbow. Following this was that scene with Noah planting a vineyard and indeed getting good and drunk. The Bible makes no secret about him having exposed himself in his tent and being spotted in that state by one of his sons, who then told the other two. The pair then walked backwards to avoid seeing their father in this embarrassing state and covered his nakedness. Upon awakening, Noah realized what had happened and cursed for some reason the son of the son who had first found him naked, while blessing the two who covered him. This is effectively the end of the whole story of the flood. There is so much here that could be examined and questioned. Did this really happen? Why was Noah spared? Was it really necessary to destroy all life because of the sins of human beings? What is this business about the rainbow and God's promise? Why did this weird scene with Noah getting drunk and naked have to happen? And even if it did, why is it recorded here? These are all great questions, but we are going to bypass them all in favor of a more technical question that might cut right to the core of everything and get us to the crux of this story. God decided to destroy mankind because of the observation that, again, quote, all the inclinations of the thoughts of man are only evil all day. But after the flood, God promised to never destroy them again, since, quote, the inclinations of his heart are evil from his youth. These two quoted observations are the precursors for the decisions to cause the flood to begin with and the promise to never do it again. But they do sound awfully similar. In fact, they sound so similar that many people might say that they're really saying the same thing. But if that is the case, how could it be that they provoked opposite reactions in God? This is a killer question. It has to be answered. One can nitpick on the words of each of these observations to find subtle differences that could account for the radical change in God's attitude. For instance, the destroy attitude came because the evil thoughts were, quote, all day, while the never destroy attitude came because those thoughts were with man, quote, from youth. This difference is there in the quotes, but the question is whether it really accounts for this drastic difference in attitude. There is really no indication that the post-flood thoughts were not also all day, nor is there any indication that the pre-flood thoughts were not also from youth. Why wouldn't they have been? So what accounts for this huge change in God's attitude? Perhaps these two observations were actually as similar as they seem to be. They essentially represent God's observations of human beings in the post-flood condition, and God's concluding that nothing much had changed. So why did God's attitude towards them change? It was because nothing had changed. It was because God saw that this was indeed the human condition. To have an evil streak from youth and to be stuck with it all the way through life. While this sounds very pessimistic and even nihilistic, it may very well be true. What if God, upon watching Noah bring that sacrificial offering of thanks, saw that the whole project was built upon a false premise, that people would get their moral act together if they were backed against the wall of destruction? God perhaps was voicing this realization in saying that, quote, the inclination of their thoughts are evil from youth. This is the way they are, and there is nothing even I can really do about it. So what did God do? God promised Noah that this would never happen again. God even told Noah that the rainbow was a kind of sign in the sky, that this was a promise that was forged as an everlasting covenant. What happened next? Perhaps as a result of this covenant, Noah got drunk. Well, this sounds like a spiritual letdown of biblical proportions. Maybe it is nothing more than telling it like it is. When a person, no matter how great they may be, realizes that whatever enduring traumatic situation they have been in is finally over, they celebrate in any way that they may know. They might give offerings of thanksgiving or something along those lines, but they also might go out and get drunk. Here we have the guy who was most responsible for the salvation of his world, going out and getting plastered, and the Bible doing nothing to mask this unsavory little tidbit. Why? Because this is the way people are. If we really think about it, we may discover that we do indeed have thoughts that can be called evil all day long. We may not be contemplating axe murdering our next door neighbors, but we may very well be thinking about the lousy way they mow their lawn or any of a million other negative thoughts out there for the taking. It's not just Facebook and social media and all that are driving this barrage of negativity in our minds. It has been there forever. God testified to it before the flood, but God also testified that this is pretty hardwired into us, so we needn't fear universal destruction again, at least from God and through a flood. This does not mean that we should go out and get drunk and naked every chance we get. It does not even mean that we should make a regular habit of doing so. It just means that if we do, we should realize that this is built into us to a great degree, and we have to make the best of things. What might we do if confronted with such a temptation? Well, for starters, we can help each other out by covering up each other's embarrassing moments instead of exposing them more. We could also get in the habit of blessing those who do lend us a hand in those trials and tribulations, and who recognize that we are just as human as they are, and we are all in this together. This perhaps is the most important lesson from this whole flood thing. We are human beings with human failings and human struggles. Sometimes God takes us to task for this, and other times God seems to cut us some slack. But at the end of a rainy day, we can always look up in the sky and gaze at a rainbow and realize that there is something in life that is truly beautiful and truly eternal in spite of all the blemishes. The rainbow. If we look at it through the right eyes, it is truly a sign from God. Shabbat shalom.